It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Lieutenant Ryan Frashure. He's the Public Information Officer for Anne Arundel County Police Department. Also, Corporal Amy Miguez, who's the Public Information Officer for the Annapolis Police Department, and Candy Thomson, Public Information Officer for the Maryland Natural Resources Police. Thank you all very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you. So the reason for this interview, and this was scheduled way in advance, is the human emotional impact of sharing police news 24/7. And the reason I just prefaced that by saying this was scheduled way far in advance is we've just had a horribly traumatic incident in the county. Ryan, can you tell the listeners about that may not have heard?
Yeah, so we had a recent homicide in Glen Burnie, where our officers responded. And when they responded to the house, they were responding for a domestic related or a family violence call, stabbing. When they arrived at the house, they had to make forced entry into the house. Once inside, they located a 10-year-old female who was deceased on the floor inside the house, continued searching the house, and located her 13-year-old brother that was also in the house that was stabbed multiple times and had trauma to the upper body. So situations like that are obviously very stressful for the officers. Everyone has different ways of coping, but that's certainly something that is an issue that we look into with our police department. Not only are they dealing with those stress, but then they have the stress of looking for the suspect, who was also a family member that had fled the scene prior to their arrival. So they have that going on, and then while they're on scene, the parents show back up home. So it's explaining to them exactly what happened. We had a language barrier, which didn't help either. So luckily we have Spanish-speaking officers on the department that were able to relate to the parents what exactly happened. So a very stressful situation, very tragic for everybody that was involved. And that's just one example of a lot of the many things that happen that can be very stressful for police officers and families while they're on their tour of duty.
And that stress goes on and on. It carries into the families.
Sure.
It's not helped by the media, even though the media is doing their job.
Right.
But the constant questioning, the constant wanting to know, the constant articles, news reports that the officers are then seeing, questioning their moves, maybe. It's not easy. Your jobs are not easy. Your jobs are relaying police news 24/7, and police news is not always pretty. Overdoses are up. You are now dealing with overdoses, whereas in the past, I think EMTs were dealing with them.
Right.
More fatalities from motor vehicle crashes in 2015 than in 2014. They keep going up. This is never easy. And I can tell when you, Candy, are in a mood by the Facebook post of the Natural Resources Police, when you are in a sad mood, when you are trying to relay information, but you're sad. I can actually read it in your post.
Wow. Okay.
Ryan, you're not always doing all the post.
Correct.
So I can't tell with you.
Yeah, usually if there's emojis or smiley faces or frowny faces, that's Corporal Davis that's usually doing that. She's more the emoji fan.
Amy, sometimes I can tell. I can tell when things are bothering the Annapolis Police Department by the posts that you're putting up.
Yeah, definitely, when you're relaying information, you're trying to inform and give as much detail as you can, but sometimes you can't completely divorce feeling out of it.
It shows that you are, in fact, human.
Sure, and I think people appreciate that. We get that a lot when we go to community meetings. A lot of people tell us that they like our Facebook posts and our Twitter posts to keep people informed. And I think sometimes showing that human side really helps. We try to stay positive on ours with with things in the community and everything, and that's not to show that we're doing stuff in the community and toot our own horn. It's to try to get away from some of that negative stuff all the time, because if not, the page would just be negative. So it's nice to throw in those positive things that we see also on a daily basis, because it's not always negative.
Right. And actually,
I was going to say it's a double-edged sword, because in our case, very often we're looking for several days for a missing, presumed dead boater. And, I try to use social media to keep the public up to speed. And people write some of the darndest, nastiest things. Right. When you've got officers who are pulling 12-hour shifts, it can be cold, it can be rainy, the conditions can be terrible. They're looking for a body that's not going to look that terrific when they do find it. I mean, they're steeled for that moment, for when they find that body, and people are second guessing, people are being mean, people are using it to settle scores, and it just is, you want to tell the officers, you don't even look, just stay away from it. I mean, comments are great, but some people don't have a filter on their comments.
We've seen the same in the media, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are a lot of trolls, and everybody's a detective now. Which actually helps you all to some extent too, because you do get a lot of tips from the public through these social media posts. Maybe not, well, to some extent with you, what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we're looking for poachers, or we're looking for somebody who's fired guns, at a house during hunting season. People tell us, we saw this license plate. That's very helpful to our officers.
But second guessing on detective work, not so helpful.
Not so helpful.
I actually had an interesting comment. It was just today, and I don't want to call anybody out, but things like having a locator on your phone about where your phone is, if it's lost or stolen. That's been around for quite some time now, and our detectives are pretty aware of that as being a tool for locating stolen
they
things.
Don't need the public to tell them about this. This is the case on Horn Point, I'm guessing.
Well, it is. I looked at it like that at first, kind of like, yeah, of course we know that. But then I thought, but it is a good opportunity with that comment to remind everybody, make sure it's activated on your device.
It is.
While you're at it, write down your serial number for your devices that are easily portable and easily stolen. Have that information.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to find out what support resources are available in each of your departments and how they're being utilized. This is Donna Cole, 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today are Lieutenant Ryan Frashure, Corporal Amy Miguez, and Candy Thomson. They are the public information officers that we most often hear from in this neck of the woods. Lieutenant Frashure is with the Anne Arundel County Police Department, Corporal Miguez with Annapolis Police Department, and Candy Thomson, Maryland Natural Resources Police. And again, thank you for being here, but thank you for doing what you do 24/7, which is relaying the police news, and it's not always pretty. Candy, you're the civilian in the room, other than me.
That's right.
Is your training the same as what the officers get, Maryland Natural Resources Police, for dealing with emotional trauma of seeing bodies quite often, relaying this information to loved ones?
Right. Well, for 40 years I was a reporter. So I was on the other side of the yellow line, behind the barricade. So I've been for 40 years I've had that in front of me. I mean, sometimes as a reporter, I'd get to the scene before officers did. A plane crash comes to mind. So, I mean, I've seen a lot before I even took this job.
To be fair, though, reporters don't get emotional training in journalism school.
They do not. As a matter of fact, most of them are emotionally stunted. No, I'm just kidding. Coming from that background. But, for 40 years, I was certainly around that. And I certainly saw my share of autopsies as a reporter. I came upon scenes that were not covered up yet. So I have that kind of background anyway. And when I worked at the Baltimore Sun for 25 of those years, there was, an employee assistance program available to us through, I believe, Shepherd Pratt. The similar situation is set up at Natural Resources Police. I mean, our officers can avail themselves of professional help. They're asked at the scene by their commanders. They're watched to look for, signs that somebody's just trying to tough it out.
Is there a peer support group?
Not that I'm aware of.
Which
Not that I'm aware
I think many of the, agencies that deal with police matters, including an article that I've read in Police Chief Magazine, recommends as being probably the most helpful, because people don't necessarily always love talking to a therapist, but they'll talk to one another. And they understand one another because you've been through the same things.
Sure. I mean, and that's the role of our chaplain in many cases is, he's not only there for our people, but he's there for the families of the person we're looking for or the body we've recovered.
And you said these are available to the officers. Are they available to you too?
I can, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I'm the first civilian to ever hold this job, so we're making this up as we go along.
Okay.
But yes, I was told right out of the box, you can use whatever services we have available. Last year, we had 21 boating fatalities, and that was a 20-year high. We had a number of swimming fatalities, and we had a number of suicides in state parks, which we would also handle. Last year was incredibly stressful. And, and every so often someone would come over to me and say, do you need our help? Do you need to step back? Do you need to take a deep breath? And I got through it. And I think I'm fine. I may twitch occasionally, but I'm pretty much okay.
All right, Ryan?
Yeah, we have plenty of programs that are in place. We've always had in the AP our Employee Assistance Program, which is countywide, which is a great resource. But what Chief Altamari has done since he has become the chief, he's also enacted our CIT program, which is our Crisis Intervention Team. So we have those two resources. We also have a mobile crisis unit. So our mobile crisis unit is more for civilians and citizens that officers are dealing with. So when they go out on in their day-to-day patrols, they come across someone on a whole variety of things, whether it's a mental health issue or whether they need resources because they're homeless or because they're a drug addict. Whatever they need help with, our mobile crisis team helps us out. They're tremendous. It's a free service. Work very well with the officers. They're 24 hours a day. So that's a great resource for the citizens. And of course, they always help the officers as well. They're there to help officers on notifications.
Was there deployment of any of these resources with the staff?
Yes, there was.
For the officers?
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And for the family as well. Our mobile crisis unit came out and was a tremendous help with the parents of those children. Also with our crisis intervention team, it's much like a peer support group. So it's made up of officers and corporals. We have a sergeant that is the supervisor in the unit, and all the officers and the supervisors that are in that unit have to sign a privacy form. And our officers know that if they call the crisis intervention team, that they can remain anonymous. And that's a good way. Again, it's a peer-to-peer type thing to where they can work through issues. So that's another great resource. And I tell you, one of the best resources we have in the county as well is our chaplains. We have a great group of chaplains that very frequently do ride-alongs, ride with the officers. They're in the districts, they're seen. It seems like we see them a lot more now than we used to see them in the past. A good group of young men and women. Seems like they're younger.
That's great. I didn't even think about that.
And they're a great resource. Again, to be there for the officers if they need anything or just anybody to talk to. Again, they'll ride along, and sometimes it makes a big difference just having somebody ride in the front seat with you, because we all ride in individual cars, and it's great just having somebody to kind of chew the fat with a little bit while you're riding around. And I think sometimes that serves like a little bit of a therapy session without it seeming like a therapy session.
Actually, it's something
it's
something that I read recently in the wake of I think it was Dallas, that another police agency instituted 2 officers in a car for exactly that reason.
Right. Yeah, so that really helps out. So we really appreciate those our police chaplains. They really do a great job, and I think that's one of the things that really helps. We talk about the heroin epidemic all the time, but if you take a step back and you look at the mental health issues that are in the country nowadays, those numbers are overwhelming too. So sometimes it feels like we're just treading water with the mental health issues with the citizens, and we've always trained to give support and help to the citizens with making notifications, but sometimes I think for years we forgot about ourselves, inside our own organization. So, and I think we all, Amy and I can tell you that sitting in the police academy, they teach you how to do death notifications, and looking at that and reading that in the book is great, but until you do your first one, it makes a big difference. It sounds easy to sit there and say.
And let's come back to that in a minute, because you learned that in the police academy.
Yes.
Candy does it, and you didn't learn it in journalism school.
I did not.
We're going to come back to that. Amy, what do you have for resources for the officers?
Well, I have to say we are pretty much the same as Anne Arundel County. We use we have a chaplain, we have an employee assistance program. Because of resources the county has, we have a CIT team, the crisis intervention team. We utilize the mobile crisis like they do as well. And Jen Corbin is amazing,
phenomenal.
And she's as willing to help the officers get through things as the citizens that they're called on to help. And it's not just the officers. Like Candy's a civilian employee. We've got call takers taking these calls, and they even feel more powerless than we do because they never make it to the scene.
Right.
The only tie they have is through a telephone. So in some cases, or hearing the officers on the radio, which can be very traumatic for the dispatchers to hear that.
We're going to take another short break. I'm Donna Cole. This is the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today are our 3 PIOs from our area police departments. We have Lieutenant Ryan Frashure, PIO of Anne Arundel County Police Department. We have Corporal Amy Miguez, PIO of Annapolis Police Department, and Candy Thomson, PIO of Maryland Natural Resources Police. We're talking about the human emotional factor of sharing police news 24/7. The good news is easy to share, and we all love reading it, and I'm sure you guys love sharing it. It's the more difficult stuff that is really probably weighs heavily on you. Ryan had just talked about learning how to deliver news of death to families. He learned that in police academy. Amy, I'm guessing you did too. Candy is a civilian, and she went to Emerson for journalism school at Emerson. You never probably learned to tell families that their loved one is dead.
No.
It's something that you do now. How
I do
have you-
occasionally.
Okay.
And it usually happens just because I happen to be standing in that particular spot at that particular time. It may be a case where we have a water fatality and everyone is looking. You know, we still have a chance that maybe this isn't a recovery, that maybe we're going to find somebody alive. And, you know, you're standing on the shore with the family that is gathered, and all of a sudden, you know, you hear on the radio that
It's not.
It's a recovery. And the family is looking at you because you've clearly just gotten some news, and things start to change on the shoreline. You know, I mean, like there's different people coming in.
Do you cry?
Do I? No.
Afterwards?
I have not. You know, I get sad, especially when it's a child. Last year, Thunder on the Narrows, which wasn't exactly, we weren't the lead agency, but we had the most officers there, and I happened to be across Kent Island at one fatality when a second one happened, the little girl. So we had one on each side of Kent Island, and I was kind of running back and forth. That's sad. The little boy who just died out in Ocean City falling off a pontoon boat and being struck by the propeller, I mean, that was just horrifying for our officers, because some of our officers had children that boy's age. So that makes it very difficult, and you just have to sort of gather yourself. I mean,
And be the strength that they need to see in
yes,
front of.
because they're looking at you. And, you know, that is not the time to just sort of go like, hey, you know what, let me get somebody from that boat out there to come in and talk to you. You really have to talk to them. And in cases where, like last year, we were doing a recovery out by the Bay Bridge, and the family had gathered in the parking lot at Sandy Point, and they were there 24 hours a day for the 2 days it took us to find. And they would see the boats come in, and they would think something good was about to happen, and they were just coming in to gas up. And the one family member just paced in the parking lot 24 hours a day. I mean, that's all he did was walk the parking lot. You know, and you try to give them comfort. Both of my parents have died. I know what comforted me when my parents passed. I've heard enough as a reporter to know what chaplains say to officers. And so, you know, you work it out in your mind, and you try to hold it together.
Ryan, have you ever cried?
I have not. I don't think I've had any that, looking back, I've had quite a few very, very tragic incidents. So no, I don't think that I have. I have had a lot of those moments where I think instead of crying, you go home and you give your kids a kiss while they're asleep when you come home late at night, or give them a hug or something. And I think that's more of an expression for me,
Right.
you know, if that makes any sense.
Amy?
I'm a crier. I'll just get it right out there.
I do when I watch Ellen. Other than that, no. I can't
When
even
you
watch
watch
Ellen
Ellen?
anymore. Yeah, the older I get, now I watch Ellen. It's
Amy, you're a crier.
Oh, totally. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, let's talk about what does get to you more than, for you know both, I've told you, you know what gets to me.
Animals.
Right. I can't even report on sad animal stories, but kids too.
I have to say that animals used to be my weak point, and I've developed over time that to be not as much. Used to be Old Yeller that got to me, but now it's families, children, families. My stepdaughter will tell you a Coke commercial will get me crying sometimes. So it doesn't take much, but it's really hard in those situations, and I'm not breaking down and unable to deliver my message appropriately, but they leak out, can't hold it in, at least I can't. As the PIO, I'm not doing a lot of notifications, but I see the whole story. I deal with the families sometimes to make sure that they're aware of what's being released, because that's really important to me that they know what's going on.
Again, thank you all for joining me today and for doing what you do.
great. Thanks, Riley.
Thank you.
This is Donna Cole, 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.